The cold bit Jake Scott's bare back against the padded polymer table, a chill that crawled right up his spine and settled like frost behind his eyes. That, or the fear. Probably the fear. He clenched his jaw, teeth grinding, the sound loud inside his own skull against the unnerving quiet hum of the laboratory. White walls. White ceiling tiles. Gleaming chrome instruments laid out on a floating tray beside him with insulting tidiness. Everything harsh. Everything sterile. Everything fucking white. Even the air tasted clean. Filtered, unnatural. A sharp chemical edge underneath that scraped his throat raw. He didn't belong here, in this upper ring crypt disguised as a science lab. He was Southside trash who'd scraped a hole just deep enough to stick his head out, and now they were about to shove it right back under. For Toby, he thought again. Say it again. Make it stick. For Toby. Straps, wide and rough like cheap canvas, cinched across his chest, his thighs, his wrists. Too tight. Deliberately too tight. Probably. Keep the specimen from thrashing. Wouldn't want to mess up their fucking precious equipment. His worn brown synth leather work boots sat under the table, toes pointing towards freedom he couldn't reach, mute witnesses to his current predicament. Next to them, his gray t-shirt, probably still carrying the scent of yesterday's grime and desperation, was folded neatly.
Subject designation JS07.
A woman's voice stated. Her voice, though calm, carried an unnerving synesthetic quality Jake couldn't shake. It sounded like cracking ice over a deep, hidden current. Dr. Eris Vale. She moved with a quiet intensity, her white lab coat pristine against the backdrop of complex machinery lining the walls. Monitors flickered with abstract swirls of color near her shoulder, greens and blues chasing each other erratically. His pathways, maybe? The ones he used to command in smoky back rooms, throwing punches fueled by more than muscle, earning just enough creds, night by desperate night to keep the Southside wolves from Toby's door. Potential, they'd called it back then. Fucking potential. Squandered on keeping his family from starving after the beast took Ma and Pa. Vale avoided his eyes. Fucking typical. Made it easier, didn't it? Easier to treat him like a slab of meat wired up for their little experiment. She held up a wicked-looking injector, a sleek chrome thing tipped with a needle that seemed far too long, holding a payload of shimmering crystalline fluid. Like captured starlight, cold and sharp.
We'll begin with the primary conduit C7 insertion,
She declared, turning not to him, but consulting a hovering holographic display nearby. Information overload. Graphs and numbers and scrolling text only she likely understood. Suspiciously calm. That Vale woman. Like she did this sort of atrocity daily. And enjoyed it? No. Not enjoyed. Tolerated. For science or money. Same fucking thing in the upper ring. Two technicians in sterile blue jumpsuits moved in unison, their faces obscured by clear shields that reflected the harsh lights like blank stares. They prepped the injection site along his spine, just below the neck. An alcohol swab, cold and stinging, sending another shiver down his already freezing back. The smell was acrid, sharp, filling his nostrils. His gut twisted. This was it. No more thinking, no more second-guessing the shithole choice that led him here. Just survive it. Just fucking survive. Images flashed, unbidden. Mira's face, fierce pride warring with fear when he told her he'd found a way. A fast way. Toby's rattling cough, the gray pallor beneath his freckles, the ever-increasing cost of the meds that barely kept the sickness at bay. You have to come back, Jake. Mira's words. Not a request. A command from his little sister who acted twice her age. He focused on the memory, on their faces, using it as a tool against the rising tide of panic threatening to drown him. He'd fought bigger bastards than this in the pits. Men whose fists hit like slag hammers. He'd taken those hits, stayed on his feet, found the opening. This was just different pain. Precision pain. Clean corporate pain. Funded by arseholes in suits pain. Vale approached. Injector held steady.
Initiating node deployment.
She murmured, almost to herself. Her gray eyes flickered toward the observation window high on one wall. The one silhouettes watched from the tinted darkness. Investors? Military brass? Hard to tell. One silhouette, sharper, leaner than the others, radiated impatience. Harker. Vale's boss, maybe. The one with the reputation. The needle discharged its crystalline payload. Agony flared white-hot. His force pathways, faint blue-green lines etched across his skin like intricate tattoos, erupted in violent, unwanted light. The burning wasn't just deep, it felt like molten tech searing into those visible conduits, colonizing the patterns webbing his arms, torso, legs. Foreign nodes invading his very surface, forcibly embedding within the glowing network. A high-pitched metallic scream tore through his skull, resonating with the lab's hum, twisting the sterile thrum into a shriek of violation as his resisting pathways were annexed, node by burning node. Subject exhibiting extreme sympathetic response, one tech reported, voice tight behind the shield. Alarms began to chime softly from a nearby console, insistent counterpoints to the escalating scream inside Jake's head.
Expected.
Vale replied coolly, though her knuckles were white where she gripped the now empty injector.
Node integration is inherently traumatic. Monitor vitals closely. Maintain infusion stability.
She talked about trauma like discussing dinner options. Then it got worse. The burning intensified, spiked, and a profound wrongness flooded him. His heart hammered against his ribs. His vision swam, the pristine white walls blurring into dizzying streaks of light and shadow. Nausea clawed its way up his throat, tasting sickeningly of copper and ozone. Sweat beaded on his forehead, stinging his eyes. His muscles seized, spasming violently against the restraints. This wasn't integration. This was war. His body, his force, everything that was him, was fighting back against the crystalline invaders, rejecting them, tearing itself apart in the process. "Rejection cascade imminent," the other tech shouted, actual alarm bleeding into his voice. "Vitals crashing. BP dropping rapidly. Massive pathway instability." Monitors shrieked urgently now, red lights flashing across multiple panels, bathing the sterile room in an intermittent hellish light. Jake felt like he was breaking apart, synapses firing wildly, overloaded. Stars exploded behind his eyelids. The feeling of his own pathways shredding, fraying under the onslaught. It was worse than any physical blow he'd ever taken. He could feel himself unraveling. "Shit," someone muttered. Maybe Vale, maybe a tech. Professionalism cracking under the pressure. Through the haze of pain, Jake saw Vale frantically manipulating controls on her console. Orders were snapped, unintelligible through the roaring in his ears. He dimly registered movement near the observation window. Harker, leaning forward, curious, or just annoyed that his investment was about to flatline. Toby. Mira, The thought fragmented, lost in the maelstrom. Darkness encroached at the edges of his vision. The pain receded slightly, replaced by a terrifying numbness, a feeling of detachment like drifting away on a cold, dark tide. So this is it. This is how the gamble ends. Busted flush. Sorry, kids. Tried. Fucking tried. No. Number A core of stubbornness, forged in Southside gutters and back alley brawls, refused to break. He wouldn't fucking die on this table for these white coat vultures. He wouldn't leave his siblings alone. He forced himself to focus, gathering the shredded remnants of his will, pushing back against the tide. He remembered the feel of the force, not as a weapon, but as a current within him. Wild, yes, unpredictable, maybe fucked up in ways these lab coats couldn't understand, but his. He didn't fight the invasion anymore. He yielded, bent, wrapped around it somehow, embraced the fucking tearing agony and let it flow through him, not against him. And then silence. Not total silence. The machine still hummed. The alarms whined down into lower cautionary tones, but the internal screaming stopped. The tearing sensation subsided, replaced by a tingling awareness, a strange resonance along his nerves where the crystals had lodged. It wasn't harmony. Oh fuck no. It felt like hostile occupation, but a surprisingly stable one.
Incredible,
Vale said, her voice hushed. Genuine astonishment. She stared intently at a monitor displaying intricate, glowing lines, his pathways mapped out in stunning, horrifying detail. Instead of the expected chaos of rejection, the lines pulsed steadily, adapting, weaving around the points of crystalline light. It looked functional. Wrong, but functional. Stable, even. Pathway configuration. It's adapting. Assimilating the nodes into a non-standard nexus framework. The techs looked bewildered, exchanging glances over Jake's prone form. From the observation window, Jake thought he saw Harker give a curt, sharp nod. His investment wasn't quite dead yet. Useful, perhaps. Jake blinked, the harsh light slowly sharpening back into focus. He felt hollowed out, scoured clean by the pain, left with this bizarre, tingling architecture inside him. And something new. A jolt, not physical, but mental. Like cold code uploaded directly into his brainstem. Text flared into existence, superimposed over his vision, crisp and digital against the white lab wall. It didn't block his sight, but overlaid it, shimmering slightly at the edges. It tasted like static electricity on the back of his tongue.
Pathway mapping interface activated. Initial calibration complete. Force regulation system online. Overall current stability 35%. Warning: foreign system integration detected. Warning: unstable adaptation protocols engaged. Notice: remote system override. Priority active.
He stared at the words, floating there in his goddamn eyeball view. 35% stability. That didn't sound remotely fucking good. And remote system override priority active. Active. Active, active, active. The word echoed in his skull. They owned him now. Well and truly fucking owned him. The nodes weren't just mapping him. They were a leash, a control mechanism wired directly into his soul. Relief warred violently with horror. He was alive. He'd survived what, judging by the hushed tones and wide eyes, others hadn't. He'd passed their fucked up test without knowing the fucking questions. But the price? Oh, the price. He wasn't just Jake Scott, Southside scrapper anymore. He was JS-07. Property. A weapon. A tool. Something they could switch on and off whenever they pleased. Vale approached the table again, her composure regained, though a faint tremor lingered in her hand as she reached out, pretending to check the strap over his chest, her fingers brushing his skin. Her gray eyes finally met his, startlingly direct for a heartbeat. There was cold scientific fascination there, yes, but also something else. Pity, regret, impossible to tell. It vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by the professional mask.
Remarkable adaptability, JS-07.
She said softly.
Your Pacific Pathway deviancy proved fortuitous.
Fortuitous. Like he'd won the fucking lottery instead of selling his maybe soul for spare parts. Jake just stared back, unable to form words past the lump of dread and exhaustion in his throat. He could still see the faint outlines of the blue and green pathway map on Vale's monitor reflected in her impassive gray eyes. He could still feel the 35% tingling inside him. He took a ragged breath, the sterile air burning his lungs. He'd survived. He'd get the money for Toby. He'd keep Mira safe. That was the deal he'd made with the devils in the white lab coats. But looking at the spectral text still hanging in his vision, the damning remote system override priority. Active. Burning like acid behind his eyes, he wondered if maybe dying on the table wouldn't have been the cleaner fucking exit. What now? What fresh hell were they cooking up for their brand new, remotely controlled lab rat?